Hi everyone. In this second session we will see how to import data back from Excel and how to then apply them to families in our Revit file. So if we open the file rooms in the lesson 2 folder, which is exactly the same that we use for lesson 1, and we then start Dynamo. Dynamo can only be started after a Revit project has been opened, and if you are using Revit 2017, the Dynamo button has been moved into the Manage. Okay, so just a recap of what we did the last time. So turn back to manual. So in the first video we learned how to write to Excel, and we learned how to retrieve all the input nodes required. So if I then write 02 new room schedule, remember sheet name is string, so we were typing string in here, and then Revit to Excel. Start row we can use a number, so just plug in, use a code block with an integer. Override, it's a boolean, and remember, if you say true, all the data in the Excel file will be overwritten. If you say false, only the data in the columns and rows selected will be overwritten. For the data, we selected the rooms manually, but what we could do is do Revit selection all elements of category and categories and choose rooms. So here we can type rooms, go there, and then we were obtaining a parameter. So get parameter by name, in here, and we wanted the number, and we wanted the area as well. So this is a list. When you run it, remember you need to change the listing to cross product in this case to retrieve all the number and all the areas for all the rooms. And when you plug it into data and run, you will see a new worksheet called Revit to Excel, the room number and the area. Let's imagine that we want to set the room occupancy for based on a certain factor that can be, I want 3 people per room. So if I take the area and I divide it by the number of people, I get this number. Oops, sorry. And we want to import these values into Revit and store them into the occupancy parameter, which belongs to the room instance. So let's save this file. The opposite of Excel write to file is in Office, it's read from file. And first of all, we notice that the first input, it says file, while in the Excel write to file it wanted a file path. Okay, so if we type file in the search library, at the bottom of my list there is a file from path node which we can connect, and the path will be the same as the one that we just used. So I can move this node down, disconnect from write to file and connect to read from file. I normally try to not read and write at the same time into a same file, but it can work. You can keep them both and it should work. Sheet name, again, Revit to Excel. You can just disconnect and bring it here. And read as a string, let's say true, so copy and paste for the moment. And eventually we can always change them back to numbers or change them to string with other nodes, in case we need to perform some other operation. If we then press run, we get an error. The file path is not found. Okay, so let's save and let's close and try again. Open. This file. Okay, so now it works. You can see that it imports all the columns up to basically F, where I placed this number. And because in the other rows these cells are empty, and the same for these cells, what you get is these null parameters. Okay. What we can do, there are multiple ways of doing this. We want to retrieve all these numbers or these values and set a parameter by name. So normally what you can do to retrieve an element inside a list is use get item at index, and then you can plug the list and you can specify the index, which is an integer. So in this case the occupancy is stored at the second index inside each list. So if we type 2 and connect to index and we press run, what we get if when we by default, so using a shortest list option, is the second list inside this list of lists. If we want to go inside each list, in Dynamo 1.2 there is this option which is called use levels. So you have to click on the arrow next to list and then say use levels and see you can now choose at which level you want to operate. So you see L3 is the outer level, so is this list with 6 lists, which contains 6 lists. Level 2 is this, each individual lists, and level 1 are all the data. You can play around and see how it works and which results do you get if you change from L2 to L3 and you cannot go further because L4 does not exist. So L2 is our list of parameters, and now what we simply need to do is use a so-called set parameter by name, which is here. By the way, if you press on element, so all these nodes are stored in Revit element, and you can see that these are all the options or the methods that you can use to extract geometry, location, list of parameters, set or override color, or get the element ID, the list of element parameters, curves, which is also important. So in here now we need to connect the elements which we already have, where here parameter name. If we don't remember the parameter, we can always go back to Revit and then select a room and check the name here, or you can use this node and connect your elements, and if you run, you have a list of all the parameters for the elements that you are connected. And in here you have occupancy unit, and occupancy is what we want. So parameter name is a string, so we can use the normal string node, type occupancy, and as a value we can simply connect the output of get item at index, and when we run, you see that all the rooms are shown. These are the element IDs, and the rooms are in the same order, if we use a watch node, as they have been selected. So what it did was selecting the first room and setting this value in the occupancy parameter, selecting the second room and giving this parameter, this value, and so on. And if we want to check Revit, see, this one has been populated, 18, 11, which is basically 33 divided by 3, 60 divided by 3 is almost 20, and so on. Okay, if we want to make things more tidy, we can group elements. So whenever there is an input, so in order to group, you select a node and then you press Ctrl G, or you go to edit and you do create group. So you can double click and say input, select Excel file. Normally there is a standard code that I think is in the PDF, which tells you which color you need to use, depending if you are, here it is, if what you're doing is, it requires an input, or it writes to Revit, or it's just doing something in background that doesn't need to be touched. So this one is an input, so it's blue, light blue. Well, so input is purple. These 4 nodes, we can group them and we can place it in gray and say read Excel data, and then again these 2, you can say select occupancy data, and finally you can move this back. This is right into Revit, so set occupancy values. Okay. When you're working with lists, when you're reading data from Excel, Dynamo reads the data by row. So if you go to Excel, you see that what it does is storing these 6 values in the first list, these 6 in the second, and so on. You can always change these visualization. So if you use transpose, you can move from rows into columns. So you have a list. Now what you have is in the first list you have the numbers, in the second one the areas, and in the third one the occupancy. And again you need to use a list get item index, and if you notice the index is the same, it doesn't change. What it changed is the indent, the position in which the list is now stored. So instead of L2 you want L3, so the first one. So you want to select this list, so you have to go up by 1 step, while in this case we wanted this item which was inside the list. If you noticed, the list count, so the amount of items inside the main list, doesn't change. What has changed is the number of lists. So we had 6 lists with 6 items each. Now we have 5 lists with 7 items each. Okay, so the next step is to explore the situation in which our data from Revit and Excel do not exactly match. So this process, this script is working because the rooms order goes to A to E, so A, B, C, D, E in Revit, and because we exported to Excel, it has kept the same order. If you in Excel had something like this, which is what happened normally, so you have the same list of rooms, but the order does not respect the one that Dynamo retrieves from Revit. What you need to do, you need to match. You need to look for room A in this list and find it at what index is, in order to then reorder the list as it is in Revit. And we will see this in the next session.